Linda Cairns had grown up in Glenrothes, which is a town situated in east central Scotland, approximately 30 miles or 48 kilometres south of Dundee. She lived with her parents and her younger sister Sandra. Linda had such a caring nature, she just wanted to help people, and so she became a Girl Guide when she was younger, and then a Girl Guide leader, and as an adult she moved to Aberdeen in north-east of Scotland to gain teacher training experience, where she worked with children with mental disabilities. Then she became a Samaritan. Following completing her teacher training, Linda moved to London and continued to work with children and with mental disabilities. She really did have such a caring nature. Then she moved from London to Dundee, where she worked as a social worker so she could be nearer to her parents, who she adored. And as their health deteriorated significantly, Linda wanted to be there to help. Linda then met Dr. Ian Glover in December 1980. When they both lived in Dundee, the pair had quickly fallen in love and then decided to move to Edinburgh for a training course, and Ian agreed to move there with her too, and by April 1982 they were living happily together in Edinburgh. Upon Linda's course finishing, the pair then decided to move back to Dundee, buying a house together in Broadford Terrace in Brortley Ferry, which is about a 10-minute drive east of Dundee. Initially, the couple had quite a loving sexual relationship. However, around July 1983, their romance became quite platonic and the pair just agreed to become friends, but they continued to live together for some time, sleeping in separate bedrooms. Linda then met Andrew Hunter sometime in late 1984, when Linda would have been about 27 years of age and Andrew would have been 33. They both had moved to Brortley Ferry and lived across the street from each other. Andrew had his wife at the time, Christine, whom he married in 1974. They had a 9-year-old son, Colin. By the time Linda, who had such a caring and giving nature, had been working with the Samaritans for many years and was a fully qualified social worker. And so when her neighbour, Andrew Hunter, approached Linda to ask if she would like to help him gain a qualification in social work too, Linda was only too happy to help him study. The two grew closer together, found that they had lots in common, and eventually started an affair. When Ian found out about Andrew and Linda's affair in December 1984, he wasn't surprised, having suspected earlier that something was going on between them. Andrew's wife, Christine, however, had not suspected anything, and when she found out in December 1984 about her husband's affair, she was distraught and pleaded that the pair ended the affair straight away, which Andrew agreed to. However, his affair with Linda began and again, and within weeks, he'd finally moved out of the family home that he shared with her, moving into a new house with Linda. But he still maintained contact with his son and still had his son over, while Linda moving out of the home she shared with Ian Glover. And this didn't affect Ian too much because they'd remained friends anyway and he knew she was going to move on at some point. The same could not be said for Christine though. However, she was distraught by ending their marriage and became very depressed. On the 14th of December 1985, about 3 months after Andrew had finally left his wife Christine dropped Andrew's son at their home, so Andrew could spend some time with his son. Andrew took his son, Colin, to the cinema and then they had tea together before Andrew returned his son back to Christine. But despite Andrew's persistent knocking on the door and shouting through the letterbox, Christine did not answer. He became worried as he knew Christine was depressed. He saw her car in the drive, the lights were on, but nobody was answering the door. Beginning to panic, Andrew then went to a neighbour who had a spare key to the property. Christine had been unable to cope with the ending of their marriage, the betrayal of her husband, and the life that she knew that had ended. She had took her life. So we're just going to jump forward to a year later, when Linda and Andrew are married, and they now have Andrew's son, Colin, living with them. 30-year-old Linda, she was recently married to her husband, Andrew Hunter, giving her the name of Linda Hunter. Every morning, Linda would get up and drive to the golf course, which was not too far away, to exercise her beloved dog, Shep, on the nearby beach. She was usually in high spirits. She worked in a residential home nearby and often worked nights. She was so close to her dog that she always had to take him everywhere she went. The dog had bladder and heart problems, but Linda lovingly gave him his medications each day. The couple had been trying for a baby, and Linda was now 6 weeks pregnant, and she was suffering from morning sickness. Linda would call her parents every day. She was devoted to them, making sure they were all okay and they didn't need anything. That Thursday morning, her husband Andrew got up and gave breakfast to his son and his friend who had stayed over. And at around 8:20 a.m, the boys set off for the bus. Now that morning she woke up in August 1987 with morning sickness and was glad that her husband had taken the day off. And at 10 a.m, Linda, who had spent most of the morning feeling terribly sick, decided to go to the pharmacy to see if there's anything that they could give her. So Andrew drove Linda to the pharmacy, but unfortunately there was nothing the pharmacist could dispense for her and passed her back to the GP. Linda walked around to the GP surgery, but the doctor was not in. Now feeling rather ill and irritable after being given the runaround, Linda went home with Andrew in the car. And when she got home, she started to pack a bag, which her husband said was quite strange because she was not going anywhere. She wasn't going to work until the following night. But she did tell her husband apparently that she wanted to go and see her parents and tell them about the baby. Now Andrew was not particularly happy because he wanted the car. According to Andrew, Linda was in quite a bit of a mood. He asked her for a lift and said, "Just wait a second, let me get my things together." But apparently before he could, Linda and the dog Shep were gone. When Linda's sister arrived at the couple's cottage later that day to visit, like she'd arranged, Linda was not there. Which was strange because if Linda had arranged to meet somebody, especially her sister, she wouldn't just not be there. Linda's family were not expecting her. Now the following day, Linda's car was discovered on Dale Street in Greater Manchester. Her Cavalier had been driven all of that way and now had a parking ticket on the windscreen. And as police looked closer into the abandoned car, they noted that it had been broken into, the radio had gone and some of the cassettes. They pulled up who it belonged to and saw that it belonged to Linda Hunter and got hold of the police back over in Scotland. They also arranged for the car to be recovered. But where was Linda? And a subsequent investigation into Linda's whereabouts was undertaken. On Saturday, the 22nd of August, 1987, at 7 p.m, the police received a call from Mr. Andrew Hunter, who was reporting his 30-year-old pregnant wife Linda missing, after she had left the family home on Friday the 21st at 10:30 a.m. with her beloved dog, 14-year-old cross collie Shep. As they investigated the car, they discovered that Linda could not have been the last person to drive it. The seat was pulled all the way back. One of Linda's earrings was found in the boot of the car, and the grey covers that were on the seats in the front had been removed, and the passenger seat doormat had also been removed. Shep's dog tablets were still in the boot, and it looked like things had been removed for almost like criminal purposes, like to remove evidence, possibly blood or DNA. The Crime Watch appeal for information revealed that police only felt that there was a very remote chance that Linda was still alive, and they were appealing for anybody who had seen the car parked in Manchester, who had parked the car in Manchester, or if they'd seen her on the drive over there with anybody or alone. The appeal was requesting people to come forward with any information, and her husband spoke of his sorrow whilst wondering where his new bride was.
Both the tools and the spare wheel seemed to have disappeared. In fact, the wheel had been fitted to the front offside. So where were the tools and the other wheel and tyre? It was a distinctive Antibes Cavalier. Somewhere between Carnoustie and Manchester, between Friday and Saturday mornings, that wheel had been changed. But where? And by whom?
It seemed logical that whoever took off the seat covers and took the mat away from the floor was doing so to make sure there were no forensic clues left behind.
This is certainly a very strong possibility.
Puncture, by the looks of it.
Yes, we would be very interested in anybody who may have seen the car between Carnoustie and Manchester on the 21st, 22nd of August of this year.
It's quite a distinctive car. Incidentally, if anybody's found that tyre itself, I know it's an MXL radial. Anybody in the tyre business would know that's very rare, and it's obviously very rare to find one attached to a wheel somewhere.
It's unusual, and it's unusual insofar as Vauxhall fitted it to that particular model.
Well, the best hope, perhaps, is that someone has found some of that material discarded from the car. For information you have, do call us if you can help in any way. 018118055.
When police officers went to take more information from Andrew, he reported that Linda had recently discovered she was pregnant. He told them about the morning sickness and that day and how he tried to take her to the pharmacy, but they couldn't do anything. He mentioned that Linda was in quite a bit of a mood and she was irritated and feeling sick. He also told them about how she'd gone to pack a bag, saying that she was going out. The police who had issued the missing person report were immediately notified about Linda's car being found, and it was arranged for the car to be transported back to Scotland to be forensically examined. But now the police had a mystery on their hands. Where was Linda? They'd found her car, but no Linda. And why would she have driven to Manchester of all places? It was such a long way. The car was abandoned and then she disappeared. The police needed to build up a picture of Linda's life, what her mental state was like, what she was doing on the day that she disappeared, the relationships around her, what was her relationship like with her husband. So they had to ask people in Linda's life for more information. Sandra, Linda's sister, was taken in and asked when she last saw her sister. And apparently she replied on Thursday the 13th of August, 8 days before Linda disappeared. She said Linda had driven to her home, the pair had spent the afternoon talking, and apparently Linda told her that she was pregnant and she was excited, going on to say that she was overjoyed, although she was suffering from this terrible sickness. And when asked if the pair's relationship was good, Sandra mentioned yes, but Linda had said that they'd been having some marital problems recently. They had been arguing quite a lot, but her sister said she didn't think it was anything too serious and just assumed it would blow over. Her sister said, Linda's pregnant, she's delighted about that. She's married the man that she loves. She lives in a beautiful little cottage. She's got a good job. She's earning good money. What more could she want, Sandra said. But the last time she'd spoken to Linda was the day that she saw her literally drive away from her home after she'd visited her on the 13th of August. Police did feel that Linda's disappearance was strange. Now, while the police were trying to gain a better picture of Linda's mental health and her marriage to Andrew, it seemed strange that his first wife had taken her own life and the second one had gone missing. It's further deepened the mysterious disappearance of Linda, and so it was time to try and find out a little bit more about Andrew and Linda's relationship. What was going on between the pair? Her sister had said that they'd been arguing recently. So they did speak to Linda's ex-partner and friend Ian Glover, and soon a more detailed picture emerged. Now, after Christine's sad death, Andrew appeared to blame Linda for what had happened, despite it being his choice to start a relationship with someone else. A fight had broken out between them in the days after Christine's death, when Linda had apparently suggested that Andrew did not need to go to Christine's funeral. And Andrew was seen to push Linda violently against a car. And then apparently, during one argument at their home, Andrew had hit Linda in the face, and on another occasion, Andrew had twisted Linda's arm so severely that she ended up in hospital. And then Dr. Andrew also said that one day he came home from work and Linda was there, explaining, well, we've got keys for each other's houses, so I thought I'd pop round. But it turned out that she was there because Andrew had put his hands around her neck and she'd felt scared. Linda had reported this incident to the police, but no further action was taken. Now, after Christine's death, it was said that Andrew Hunter had started talking about ending his own life and had received some treatment for this in hospital for about 4 months after being discharged in about 1986, just before the wedding to Linda. However, on the 1st of November 1986, Andrew and Linda had married in a church wedding, and her younger sister Sandra was her bridesmaid. And from the photos, Linda and Andrew appeared to be happy, smiling, and they both looked beautiful. The pair spent their first night together in the 480-year-old Grand Verney Castle in Fife, before heading on a beautiful honeymoon to Israel. Now, upon their return, the pair seemed really happy. They were content, they'd just got married, and they started getting back into normal life, working. Now, apparently Ian said that he'd received a phone call from Linda one night saying that Andrew was showing signs of aggression. No physical violence, but his demeanour had changed. Now, the last time Ian had seen Linda was on Thursday, the 20th of August. Linda had been out walking her dog and looking after his dog, Jimmy, from the 18th of August while he'd been away on business. Ian came back on Wednesday the 19th of August, but Linda had said that there was no rush to pick his dog up. But then he received a phone call from Linda on the Thursday saying, "Can you pick the dog up?" as she wasn't feeling too well. Now, Ian said he stayed over at Linda and Andrew's house after picking up the dog, but he felt there was some kind of tension between the pair. Now, while police were building up a picture of the relationship and what had been going on between the pair, they were now concerned for Linda's welfare and beginning to focus on the possibility that her husband may be involved in some way, but they didn't know what, and Linda's body had still not been found. But while Andrew was seemingly giving detailed accounts of his movements in the run-up to Linda's disappearance, the detectives noticed that he didn't seem to show any signs of emotion when talking about Linda. She was pregnant, his wife, but it was almost like he didn't care and he was just talking like he was telling any type of story. And it was as if he'd trained himself to show no emotion. They asked Andrew about the state of his marriage and if he'd been seeing anyone else, and he replied that his marriage was okay and that him and Linda didn't really have any arguments. He did mention that she'd been irritable lately because of the sickness, and the detectives also asked Andrew on numerous occasions why he thought Linda might have disappeared, and the only explanation that Andrew could come up with that she just wanted space, although he couldn't come up with any reasons why she might want space. While police were beginning to suspect Andrew had been involved in her disappearance, he did appear to have a cast iron alibi, but their instincts were telling them a different story. And by now, Linda's disappearance was presumed death. And without any witnesses or evidence or even a body, police decided to drive as far as Manchester and then take the train back to Dundee to see if the trip could be done if Andrew had have driven there, abandoned the car and then got the train back, which they were able to do with about 15 minutes to spare. Now, following the Crime Watch reconstruction that appeared to show exactly what had happened, two separate witnesses had come forward saying that they'd been travelling through the area on Friday the 21st of August, reported sighting a car that looked very much like Linda's white Cavalier. Both witnesses said the car had been driven by a male and a female had been in the passenger seat. Both witnesses believed that this was Andrew Hunter's car that they'd seen and Andrew Hunter driving, with one of the witnesses picking Andrew Hunter out as the man on an identity parade, as similar to the man seen driving the car. Then another witness came forward saying that they'd seen a male carrying a bundle from a light-coloured car in St Michael's Woods, even though these woods were located 12 miles north-east of Fernie Castle. The police believed that this was where Linda may have been buried, and so a massive search began in December 1987 at St Michael's Woods, with Andrew even lending a hand. However, following an extensive search lasting 3 days, Linda's body was just not found. Detectives continued to speak to Andrew, having him in multiple times, but each time he seemed to look less interested. The next time they had Andrew in, they wanted to know more about Shep's lead and collar. Andrew again advised that Shep's lead and collar were missing from the house. They were missing from the car, which wasn't unusual as Linda loved Shep. She took him everywhere she went and they would probably be on him. He also said that Shep never left the house without his collar and lead. Now, this line of questioning might have seemed a little bit odd at the time, but it would later prove vital. In the meantime, though, police had no leads. They had no idea where she was. But on the 11th of February 1988, 6 months after Linda disappeared, a body was found in Melville Lower Wood, Ladybank, by a dog walker. It's always a dog walker, isn't it? These woods are a 6-minute drive from where a witness claimed to have seen who they believed to be Andrew Hunter, who they picked out in an identity parade, reporting that there was a female passenger in the car that looked distressed, and near to where the other person had said they'd seen a man getting out of a white car carrying a bundle. So the post-mortem discovered that Linda had been murdered by strangulation. She'd actually been found with her dog Shep's lead around her neck. The next day, police knocked on Andrew's door to tell him the news that they'd found Linda and that she died from being strangled. As they attended Andrew's home, it seemed a bit strange. There was a really weird atmosphere, and they discovered that there was a lady in the house, namely a sex worker, at the time when he was finding out about his wife being found dead. I mean, detectives were surprised that he didn't appear to be overly concerned or upset, preferring to talk about football instead and enjoying the company of this sex worker. But then police wanted him back in again with the line of inquiry, it wouldn't be long before the real Andrew Hunter would finally be revealed. Andrew Hunter had not had the best start in life. His mum had died within weeks of giving birth to him, and shortly after his father had abandoned him, leaving him to be brought up by his aunt. Andrew had craved family from a young age. As a young man, he'd joined the Salvation Army in Glasgow, where he met and fell in love with Christine, his first wife, who was 11 years older than him. Andrew had received a lot of encouragement and love and time from Christine that he'd not got from anyone else in life. Christine encouraged him, and in 1973 they'd got married. They had their son, Colin, and while Christine was married and happy, Andrew was out looking for something else. It turned out afterwards that Andrew was apparently going to sex workers despite marrying Linda, but he continued to have sex workers throughout Linda's disappearance. So police were very keen to speak to all of Andrew's friends, any people, sex workers, anyone that he spent time with. When finally on the 9th of April 1988, just a short 8 months since Linda had gone missing, and after police had interviewed more than 5,000 people and taken 1,200 statements, Andrew was arrested. It was at this point that a search was carried out of Andrew's home, and what they revealed was felt to be conclusive evidence that Andrew had been involved in the disappearance and murder of his wife. Due to Linda's disappearance appearing on Crime Watch, it had thrown the case into the spotlight. The newspapers were interested. Everybody in England wanted to know what had happened to Linda, which in turn brought vast numbers of people to the High Court every day in hopes of getting a seat in the courtroom. The accused, Andrew Hunter, faced the charge of murdering his wife, Linda Hunter, by strangling her with the dog lead that she used for Shep. The dog lead that went everywhere with Shep every time Linda left the house. Andrew's alibi was that he'd been with various people between the hours of when she disappeared. They believed that when Andrew and Linda returned from the chemist on the morning of Friday the 21st of August, an argument had broken out, and Linda had stated that she wanted to go to her parents' house. She often stayed the night over there to take care of them, and so Andrew had offered to drive her and Shep there. But it was believed that the pair had continued to argue in the car, leading for Andrew to pull over in a lay-by near the woods at a quiet part of the road, grabbing Shep's lead from the back of the seat and placing it around Linda's neck, strangling her while they were arguing. Quickly, before anyone happened to see what was going on, Linda's lifeless body was apparently carried to the back of the car and carried into the woods before quickly returning to his car and driving off. That's when they believe that he drove to Manchester, abandoned the car and came back on the train. However, before Detective Steddon stepped down from a witness box, he was advised of the search that had been carried out in Andrew Hunter's home. And it was asked why Shep's dog collar had been found behind a laundry basket. He went on to say that Linda would never leave the house without Shep and the dog collar. Andrew had even said to detectives that she would never leave the house without it. But he had made the ultimate mistake of taking that dog collar back home with him, only for the police to find it months later when they searched the house. The detective stepped down from the dock, pleased with himself and safe in the knowledge that Andrew would have no explanation for the dog collar being found in his house. On the 2nd of August 1988, after a 2-week trial, the summing up by the prosecution began. They reminded the jury of all the witness statements made throughout the trial, talked about Shep's collar being found behind the laundry basket. They spoke about the relationship that other people saw. 37-year-old Andrew Hunter was found guilty of the murder of his 30-year-old pregnant wife, Linda Hunter. The judge said, "You are an evil man of exceptional depravity," before he gave Andrew a life sentence. Linda's family were relieved at the outcome for justice for Linda, but still, after losing their daughter, they were also faced with a life sentence. However, on the 19th of July 1993, 5 years after being convicted of the murder of his wife, Linda, Andrew died of a heart attack whilst in prison. The death of Andrew Hunter put an end to the possibility of a case being brought against him for the murder of Dundee sex worker Carol Landon in 1979. Andrew was well known to have visited sex workers regularly in the area of Dundee. What do you think about this case? It certainly had its twists and turns. It's strange because I look back and I did watch this Crime Watch episode when it was aired years and years ago, and I was only young myself. And it just seems strange, and I always felt that it was the husband, and later we find out that it actually was. So it's sometimes nice to watch the old episodes of Crime Watch and then actually find out what happened, because on the episode you don't always get the end result. The end result comes after the programme, so it's nice to get the story and exactly what happens at the end. Thank you for listening. As always, guys, take care, and I'll be back with you again soon. Bye for now.